growing up, yeah. This is for the one who ain't never had a love, yeah. This one's for the girl who don't feel like she's enough, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one's for the cool kid playing on the school team, crying to himself cause he never had the prom queen. Head full of wants, but they said it's just a pipe dream, yeah. This one's for the kids like me, they never had one day. The ladies always turn their cheek, but they ain't let the fat ones sing. This one's for the kids like me, kept working when they had nothing. When people try to take their dreams, they stuck it to them, please don't change.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. It's felt like ages since I've been back doing this show. It's been a few weeks. For those that didn't watch yesterday on my quick little show, battling a little bit of sickness, got the cough drop in, ready to go. If you see me off screen, I'm probably having a coughing fit, but I'm excited to be back. Going to do all the little preamble real quick. We appreciate everyone wherever you're watching from, whether it's Twitter, Facebook. Yes, I did dead name X. It is Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Kick, wherever you're watching from. Please do the due diligence. Give a follow, repost, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Just so we can get this out there, spread this word of mouth. And if you're listening on the podcast form, thank you over there. Give us a rating and also subscribe over there. For those that could see, David is not with me again. He's working, unfortunately. I think he's watching a little bit here. And if you are, hi, Dave. He'll be back on his off days. And, he always misses the fun interviews, but that's okay because he's not that missed. Dave, you can go away. But overall, I'm excited to be here. This has been a show that I have been looking forward to. Before we jump into that, 2 weeks ago now, it feels like many moons ago, we had Cliff Maloney on, the CEO of Citizens Alliance and founder of the PA Chase. An integral individual to getting Donald Trump elected over in Pennsylvania. Between him and Scott Pressler registering, seems like 7 million residents over there. They did such a good job. So go back and watch that episode. Cliff was absolutely fantastic. But this week, I am pumped to have this individual on. She's somebody that, honestly, just knowing who she is, her stature, what she's doing, I thought it was really cool that when we had Adam Coleman on, she is, a big fan of Adam, just like we are. He's a representative of her brand. And she kind of chimed in, reposted it. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I was like, hey, Adam, I'd love to have her on. And he's like, oh, she's willing to come on. I'm like, yes, this is going to be fun. So she is none other than Jennifer Sey. She is the founder, owner of the XXXY Athletics brand. What is going on, Jennifer?
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Alex. I love Adam. He's awesome.
Absolutely. Adam is so cool. It was funny too, because like when we've had Adam on a few times now, and when we first had him on, it was like a year or so after he kind of rose to like the Twitter fame and had his book and was really coming into his own with Wrong Speak. And he has just done so much since then and become like such a huge part of the like new right culture and kind of fighting for all the right things. Being, good friends with Moms for Liberty, who we love over here. We've talked to Tina and Tiffany, and then becoming an ambassador for your brand, XXXY, and just being on all the right sides of things. He's so cool. And you're freaking awesome too, because you did not have to jump into XXXY. So what made you start that brand?
Well, let's see. So my background, I was an elite gymnast as a child. I was a very serious athlete. I trained, 8, 9, 10 hours a day when I was 10, 12 years old. I was on the national team
elite,
sometimes.
Yes, 7-time national team member.
Yeah, 7-time. And elite is what it's called in gymnastics. It's literally like that's the level you qualify for, so that you can vie for spots in the national team. You can vie
Yep.
for spots on, world championship and Olympic teams, that kind of thing. And I was a 1986 national champion. As we were chatting before the show, I am often called the worst national champion that ever was. And to your point, I'm like, yeah, well, I was still a national champion.
Yep.
So, I was an elite gymnast. I'm very proud of everything I achieved, but it was a very brutal training environment. And I suffered because of that for, I would say, a good 2 decades after I came out of the sport, just the emotional and physical abuse. And we were surrounded by sexual abusers. I myself evaded that fate. But the national team coach at the time was a man named Don Peters. I was sent around the world with this man. He was abusing members of the national team, friends of mine, some friends to this day. And we were sort of told, just avoid him. We know that, he's sketchy. I'm paraphrasing here, but just don't be alone in a room with him. And that's what they told little girls, teenage girls, some of us were little at the time, and then we became teenage girls. And
But I mean, like, it's crazy to even think about that, because as as we all get older, right, you realize just like I knew nothing when I was that age. Like, as you get older, like, you think you know a lot when you're 13, 14, 15, 18, whatever it is.
yeah, you don't know
But then you
anything.
realize, like, I know absolutely nothing. And it's kind of what you're looking around with now with a lot of things going on. It's like, where the hell were all the parents? Like, I understand, like, it was kind of the culture, but it's like,
Well,
it's
I
easy
can
to
explain
demonize
that.
now,
Yeah.
right? Like, but
Yeah.
like, go ahead.
I mean, I think there's a few things. First of all, I didn't live with my parents. I moved away from home. So my parents weren't really seeing a lot of what was happening. At a certain point, they did move to where I was training in Allentown, Pennsylvania, but parents weren't allowed in the gym. But beyond that, they're sort of conditioned to think this is normal. I'm not letting
Mhm.
them off the hook. Believe me, I've been very tough on my parents. We've sort of resolved it all and put it, behind us. But
That's good.
they get sucked up in it, and that's the culture, and it becomes normalized. This abuse becomes normalized, this like extreme emotional, physical, mental abuse. So I left the sport and I was really pretty broken. I was severely anorexic. I was very depressed. I had, I say PTSD. I mean, it's half jokingly, but half not. I mean, I had
No,
horrible
absolutely not.
nightmares
Yeah.
for 20 years, waking up in the middle of the night because I had nightmares. I trained on a broken ankle for 2 years. I was in terrible pain all the time. There was a doctor that came to our gym and shot us up with cortisone. He'd bring his black bag to the gym. No parent was
Which I'm like
forgiving us.
completely against cortisone for athletes. Like,
Well,
I know it's such a massive thing, and like the NFL, it's known that it's used. I was huge on, like, I didn't like icy hot and Bengay, because like I wanted to know what my muscles were telling me at the time. And like, I get it, like they want to like lessen the tired, but like I wanted to know if I was doing
they want
something
to
wrong.
lessen the pain so you can get back out there. And there's no
Exactly. Like,
acknowledgement that pain is a sign that your body is breaking down. And in my case, that my ankle was
absolutely.
actually broken. Um, but gymnastics for girls, and this is changing, I think, but it has typically been viewed as, you have a very narrow window of opportunity. You have to be very young and very small,
Mhm.
prepubescent. So that's where a lot of the eating disorders came from and were encouraged, frankly. I mean, we were weighed in twice a day. Our weight was announced on the loudspeaker. We were shamed for gaining a quarter of a pound. But if you view this as, you have 4 seasons as an elite.
Yeah.
I'm making the number up, but it was
Mhm.
a lot more than that. And so you're not going to miss a season. So if you're hurt, you're going to get shot up with cortisone so you can get back out there. Because if you miss a season, your chances are gone. That was the thinking. I think that's false. I mean, I think Simone Biles was 27 this summer when she won the Olympics. So clearly,
Yep.
that is a belief system that I think is being
The
overcome. And when you have
narrative in
more
women's
time,
sports is
it's
changing so much,
changing.
because
Yeah, it
we've
absolutely
also
is.
seen, we had I do a second show called Talking in Ovals with the former coaches, a track and field show. And 3 weeks ago, we had on Kira Diamato, who is the American half marathon record holder. She set
Mhm.
that 8 years after a hiatus of being an elite athlete in
Right.
college, had 2 kids, I believe, and came
Amazing.
back to training. And at the age of 38, set the
Yeah,
American
that's
half
amazing.
marathon record. So it's like,
That's
I
so
feel like,
cool.
Ellie St. Pierre was an Olympian for track and field, and that's like what I know. And she just got done being pregnant a year before trials. So it's like,
It's so
the
awesome.
narrative is
Well,
changing so much in women's
it
sports,
really
like
is.
what
I mean,
women can and can't do.
the women's gymnastics team at the Olympics this year, they were all in their 20s except one,
Mhm.
which is a really dramatic difference. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was 17 and a member of the national team, and people called me mom on the team because I was the oldest by
That's
far. So
crazy.
anyway, I digress. I was a very serious athlete, so athletics, women's sports does matter to me. I
Yes.
also wrote a book in 2008. This is what I was leading up to, called Chalked Up, which was really the first person account of abuse in the sport. And
That's crazy.
I was unprepared for the backlash I received from that. I'll admit, it was very early days of social media, so I did not know what to expect. And the people that came after me and were really brutal and threatening violence and lawsuits and all of this stuff were members of the gymnastics community.
Of course.
People who I thought were my friends. I mean, not just coaches, not just USA Gymnastics, although the head of USA Gymnastics did leave threatening voicemails on my, at my work. But it was my teammates, Team USA, and it was so startling to me because I knew they knew that's what it was like, but that was not, the mindset was, we want to protect the sport. The image is built on happy, shiny, bouncy little girls. We want to
Yep.
remember it that way, because to not remember it that way is frankly too horrible.
Mhm.
And we're not going to talk about it. And so that was fairly brutal, but I toughened up. I
Did
toughened
you
up, and I learned to take that kind of criticism. And I realized that
sorry.
if they're coming for me this aggressively, it's even worse than I imagined. And I do not want this to happen to another little girl, because here I am, 40 years old, married, 2 kids, successful career, and I suffer from low self-esteem, panic, depression
Insane.
because of the coaching from 25 years earlier. So I just persisted, and eventually the story of Larry Nassar broke, and that kind of blew the doors off the whole thing.
Did you lose a lot of like speaking engagements, invitations to things after, as a, being, a prominent member of USA Gymnastics for a long time? Did you kind of lose opportunities because of what you did from people that used to come asking you to do things and stuff like that?
I didn't really lose opportunities because I had left gymnastics behind me. I
Mhm.
had really not great memories of it. I was sort of trying to sort through all of it, and I just went headlong into the next phase of my life. I went off and I went to Stanford, and then I started working, and I started working at Levi's in 1999, and I committed myself to my career. So, I wasn't this person that was a judge or a coach or really involved in the sport in any way. So, there was nothing really for me to lose. I had this whole normal adult life, normal
Yeah.
except for the fact that I still, suffered from the impacts of the abusive coaching. So that was the earlier part of my life. Then I went on and I worked in corporate America, mostly fashion, not just Levi's, a few other places before that, but certainly the bulk of my career was spent at Levi's, and I started there as an entry-level marketing assistant. It was a brand I had loved and worn for a very long time, still
Yeah. Yeah.
wear it most days, and worked there 23 years. I, worked my way up the ranks from entry level and became the brand president actually in 2020. And I was the CMO, the chief marketing officer, for 8 years, which is a very
Wow.
long time to be a CMO.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the average tenure is like 20 months in that job. It's a tough
Wow.
job. So, was successful in that role, helped the company IPO. And yeah, I mean, I had a tremendous career there that I am absolutely very, very proud of. In 2020, and I was still working there. I lived in San Francisco, and COVID hit, and me and my husband were opposed to the lockdowns from the very first day.
Good.
And we were very outspoken. I was very focused on school closures. Again, the harm to children I thought was something we'd be able to kind of all align on and see eye to eye, but that was not the case. And
And the bravery to do that in San Francisco, like I'm here in upstate New York, well, quote unquote upstate to everybody else in the world, but in Poughkeepsie, and it's like we kind of balance that out. I was fortunate my 2 girls weren't into like schools
right,
really yet
they
at
were
that
little.
point. They were little, but it was tough to do here. I can't
Yeah.
imagine
Oh,
what it took, especially in your field and in your industry where
it was
everyone was so wrapped up in the we have to do our part. We're in this together. Mask up, social
it
distance,
was
get the shot.
so
Like
It was so
craziness,
brutal, and
draconian.
I had 4 children.
Oh,
Still have. I didn't just
right.
have 4. I have 4, and they're a very broad range of ages. So I had 1 in college, 1 in high school, 1 in elementary school, and 1 in preschool. You don't ask. There was a gap in the middle. It's obvious. I got divorced, and then I had more children. So
It's okay.
I was very concerned about my kids. I was the only person of my sort of professional rank that had her kids in public school and had
Mhm.
throughout their schooling. And, I knew that school population, not that you need to know them to know that a lot of those kids are low income, they're left home
Yep.
alone.
Mhm.
I just knew. And when I started, you say it was courageous. I didn't really think of it that way. I just was like, this doesn't make any sense.
You were
I'm
just
going
being
to
a
say
mom.
something. And I didn't really have much of a following on
Yeah.
social media. And I was calling into the board meetings that were all, or the school board meetings that were virtual and trying to, ask questions about opening. And there just weren't. I mean, I often joke, but I think it's quite literally true. I think my husband and I were literally the only two people in San Francisco that from day one were like, hell no, this is really bad. And
Probably.
there's no off ramp, and they're saying 2 weeks, but it's going to be really, really long. They're just going to keep moving the goalposts. It's exactly what happened. So
Yep.
I got a following of people that really, really hated me and were coming for me. And I mean, I had people
Crazy.
chasing me down the street in San Francisco,
Wow.
calling me names, calling me a murderer. It just got all very ugly.
And it's so funny,
And
they're chasing you as they're the people that want you to social distance, as they're the people that
go
want you to
away.
mask up. They're chasing you. Like
I,
the things that the stupidity that COVID and the lockdowns
it's
caused was like next level. And there needs to
it's
be like maybe
there
20 years
needs to
down
be
the
a
road, there needs to
reckoning.
be an experiment or like just a research on how that chemically imbalanced people's brains. Because it's still to this day, there are people that are insane about it.
Yeah, well, I have a little bit of a theory on it. I remember thinking this at the time. Like when it first happened, I was like, I had no idea people were this willing to follow orders, even when they go against their own self-interest,
And the
when they go
police
against.
officers too. That's
Yeah,
what
I mean, I
concerned me
had no
more than
idea.
anything.
But then I realized, and this sort of comforted me, that's always true.
Yeah.
70% of people will prioritize standing with the group versus standing up and doing the right thing. And
In
we
the
see it
name of
across
safety.
it, yes, and safety is always what authoritarian regimes offer
Of
in
course.
exchange for your, obedience. So
Because it
it,
stokes up fear and you get
yeah,
that fear impulse
exactly.
and people just don't want to go against it. I'm safer if I just listen and that's what we're going to
That's
do.
right. So my husband and I were having no part of it. He's a
I love it.
stay-at-home dad, so there wasn't so much risk for him. Um, People were publishing my address online, like it was crazy how bad it
Jesus,
got.
it's
Yeah,
insane.
and it just got really ugly. But at a certain point, I lost hope that San Francisco would even open the school. So my husband, we moved. We took our two younger children and we moved to Denver, which is very blue, which is what I was many years ago. Um, that all
Well,
ended
here's the
with
thing. You
COVID.
probably still are more blue. It's just they left you. I found a lot of
Well,
the
yeah,
ways, like, the people that are like on the right now, most of them are just, disaffected Democrats from 10 years ago. Like we're
yeah.
looking
I'm
at
a
Donald Trump.
classical
Donald Trump
liberal.
isn't
Yeah,
a conservative. Donald
no,
Trump is a Bill Clinton Democrat.
yeah.
Like he's
No,
just
you're
not
right.
insane.
No, you're right. It's that meme of like I stayed the same and you all left me like Colin Wright
Exactly.
did. Yeah. But we decided to move because we just lost faith and
Mhm.
that the schools would ever open. I mean, we were relentless. I called into these board meetings. They were 9 hours long. I would ask questions. No one would answer them about school openings. And I just eventually was like, fuck it. Like, this is not going to
Yeah.
happen. I got to take
Nope.
care of my kids. So we came to
Yeah.
Denver potentially temporarily, but the schools were open here. I mean, my son had a very normal school experience as soon as we got here. And I'm really, really grateful for that. I think our governor, Jared Polis, maybe this is not the best compliment, but he was definitely the best Democratic governor on COVID. The schools were
Yeah.
open, and
There were
that's
some
not
terrible
nothing.
Republican governors too. Like it's not
Oh
that
yeah,
that was kind of just like if the brain
everyone,
worm of COVID got you, you
everyone
were
went
screwed, and
crazy.
it didn't matter what side of the aisle you were on there.
Yeah, most of the Republicans came out of it a little
Yes.
bit sooner. Everybody was terrible in the beginning, literally everybody.
I mean, I think it
But
was the bravery of your DeSantis and Kemp. I think those
yeah,
were the two that kind of led the charge. And as much
I
as
think
Kemp was
so.
like pretty wishy-washy in 2020, his COVID response, I remember Florida and Georgia. I think Georgia was first actually, was like, hey,
Yeah,
we're reopening. And then
yeah,
DeSantis did it and they were demonized, but they ultimately saved their whole economies and they saved their
yeah.
states. And then it gave other governors a little more spine to do it.
Cover. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And DeSantis is so smart. He had studied the data and it was,
Oh, yeah.
data backed and all of that. So anyway, we moved. We were working from home at the time still, so that was not a problem to live further afield. But
Mhm.
it became more and more difficult to remain. It just, when you go against, I mean, I was going against all of corporate America.
Oh my
It
God,
was
yeah.
like there just wasn't space for me
You were going
anymore.
against trillions of dollars
Yeah,
invested into this stuff.
yeah, and so I made the decision to resign in the spring of 2022, which
Mhm.
was a sad and difficult decision because, like I said, I love the brand. I'm proud of all the work I did there. But here's a little story I'll tell you. So then I decided I would take a break. It had been a very difficult, year and a half, two
Absolutely.
years really,
Yeah.
but I have to work. I'm the breadwinner. I have 4 children. 2 were in college at the time. And so I started interviewing for big jobs back in corporate America. And this is like 2023. So you're like, okay, people are not as crazy about COVID anymore.
Mm.
And I would do, yeah, they were exactly. I would do these interviews and they would be, many, many hours because these are big jobs, like CEO jobs. And did one
Yeah.
and it all went really well. And they just asked me about, my skills and my experience and my leadership style and all of these things. And then the last person was like the HR rep on the board. And
Oh.
she asked me point blank, will you apologize for what you've done?
HR is the biggest poison to corporate America
Oh,
of any
I
job
could talk
ever.
about that
They are just
forever.
the most useless hens and ducks. That's what I call them, hens and ducks,
Oh,
because all
yeah.
they do is quack
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
chirp.
yeah.
That's it. That's all they
Yeah, and
do.
tell you
They
what you can say and
they
not
are
say.
there to destroy companies. Nothing more. Destroy cohesion. They never help. HR. If Trump does anything draconian, it's to get an executive order to demand all HR departments around the country are eliminated.
Or
Like,
just to go back to doing recruiting and benefits. Like, do that. That's all we want from you.
yeah,
Don't police our speech. Don't
no.
make us take weird trainings all day long that take us away from the business. So
And
anyway,
don't say I'm here for you to come complain because you're not. Go
yeah,
away.
no, right. So when she asked me that, I was like, oh, I'm never allowed back in corporate America. Because I'd proven myself to be disobedient. I'd proven myself to be someone that says what I think. And that's not really appreciated in
No.
corporate America. They pretend that they want brave thinkers, bold talkers, decisive people, but they don't. They want people that follow the script. So
Well, I mean, I don't
this
know if
is
you
all,
read Vivek Ramaswamy's book, Woke Inc. Because when that came out, and there were things I disagreed with Vivek in it in terms of like political views, but he hit that right on the nose when he was
yeah,
like coming up and working for some of these big capital firms and things like
yeah,
that. They would take photo ops and then just leave. Like they
yeah,
would show
yeah,
that they're these altruistic, like
right.
great groups,
But they don't
but
do
none of it
anything.
was real. They didn't actually give a shit about anything that they were talking about. It was
Well,
all virtue signaling, and that was all it was.
Well, that's what was in the summer of 2020 when things, and even beyond in 2021, when, corporations at that point were pledging fealty to DEI. Like that's when it
Mhm.
happened, the summer of 2020 with George Floyd. That's when they
Yep.
hired heads of DEI. And that's when everybody had to start going through all these trainings, anti-racist trainings. And I remember I was just so angry. I remember ranting to my husband because I was like, I don't want to do these trainings. Like if we want to help the vulnerable, the poor, if we want to help the Black community, we need to open the schools. It's the most
Yeah.
structurally
100%.
racist policy
Uh-huh.
I can ever imagine. The San Francisco public schools are 60% low income kids. A very large percentage of those children are Black and Hispanic. Um, anyway, so I realized at that point when she said, would you apologize for what you've done? Or will you? Or you must, or something like that. And I
Yeah.
was like, hell no.
Yeah. Leave
Um,
me alone.
I was like, I'm going to need to forge another path for myself. So that's when I decided to start this brand. That's the very long answer to your question.
I like it.
Because I was like, I was an athlete. I thought I could combine my athletic experience, my fashion and apparel experience with my willingness to say, true but inconvenient things that make people angry. So I felt like this issue, I care deeply about women's sports. If males are permitted to compete in women's sports, there will be no women's sports anymore. And
Exactly.
so, and I believe brands can influence the culture. The left has been using the tools of culture, whether it's brands or music or film or whatever, to influence public opinion.
Yep.
No one is doing it well on the other side with
Nope.
an alternate view. And a lot of the brands started by people that are more conservative, which, like I said, I don't even consider myself, are not that good. They're not
And
great
they
products.
also, I've always complained, it's like they include like patriot and freedom and liberty. And it's like,
Right.
okay, you're now like segregating a whole half of the group that's not gonna buy your stuff because I'm sorry to say a lot of the people on the left are not super patriotic in that sense. They're not gonna wear their red, white, and blue everywhere. So it's like
Yeah.
what I like with your brand is you don't necessarily have to know what your brand is about by looking at your marketing, right? Like if you're kind of like a little bit in the know, you're like, oh, those are chromosomes. I get it. Smart. But if you don't know, you're just like, oh, that's pretty dope. XXXY. I'll wear it. It looks nice. Like
It just
some
looks
people,
cool, yeah. It
yeah,
looks cool.
yeah,
I mean, we're pretty clear about the message we
you
say,
are.
and I will say, repeatedly, we are the only brand standing up for the protection of women's
Hell yeah,
sports and
you are.
spaces, and it's amazing. People play it back. People know what this brand is about. They know we're the only ones doing it, and I think we are normalizing it because the fact is most Americans agree with us, but
Mhm.
most people are too afraid to say it. But if you see someone wearing the sweatshirt or the T-shirt at the soccer game on the weekend, you might go, "Oh, I'm allowed to say it. I can say that out loud." And I've noticed, I've seen people around Denver wearing it, people I
Yep.
don't know that I haven't given it to. And I think it just sort of breaks the ice for people. It
Mhm.
gives them permission. Because if you make great product that looks cool and you have great marketing that elevates and is cool, then suddenly it just normalizes standing up for girls and women, which should be normal, but it's not.
So,
And we just want people to know you're not a bigot.
nope.
It's
Okay
the
to
right
defend your
thing.
daughter. It's okay to defend your wife. It's okay
Yes,
to
it's
want them to have
compassionate.
an even playing field. So,
It's
I want to
compassionate.
I want to bring up your website because I want people to get a good look at it because number one, I think your products are awesome. I love the design and everything you have going on here. People need to look. There's a holiday rush. Go get your beanie, 40% off there.
Good
But
gift.
this is the brand. Anyone that wants to go on, it's www.xx-xyathletics.com. And I just want to go. I think the tees. I want to click on those because I'm a fan of for graphic tees. I'm a sucker for them,
Me
and
too.
I think they're fantastic. And I just think the way you have your marketing here in all different colors, this logo classic, the American style. I'm definitely copying one of those because those are freaking sweet. But, just right here, there's our buddy Adam hanging out over there, looking
Yeah.
like a stud. And just, I want people to jump in here and just see that these are products like, yes, this one over here, Stand Up, Save Women's Sports, a little more outspoken, right? A little bit
Yes.
more on the nose. If you
Yeah.
want to be that outspoken, do it, right? But
Right.
you don't have to. You could just wear the XXXY brand. And when people ask, then you could tell them about, hey, I just want to keep
That's right.
sports. The sports are meant to be segregated. Like that's
Yeah.
the one thing in society we agree on that segregation's cool, right? In
Right.
terms of sex, we want men competing with men, women competing with women, and I just love the message. I love everything you got going on here, um, and I want more people to stand up. And I think this one's awesome too. The Girl Dad. It's so simple, and it's been such a big like push in this generation to be a girl dad that it's like that might be like your most benign t-shirt and brand, which is
But
crazy, but like
we want men to weigh in. Like, where are the
hell
dads?
yeah.
Weigh in.
Yeah,
Be proud of being a girl dad.
yeah.
Be proud of your daughter who's a tremendous athlete.
There's Riley
Prepare her to
Gaines,
do
big
the
fan of
right
her.
thing. Yeah, she's one of our
She's fantastic.
ambassadors.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, the t-shirts have been a top seller. Graphic tees are, yeah, they're fine. People want, in fact, it's funny you say that because with some of our products, we make performance product too, which you don't have to show. By performance, I mean really amazing leggings, moisture wicking fabrics, all that stuff. It's more subtly branded, and people often say, like, well, I want a big logo on everything. Like we wanted to offer some stuff
Here's more
that
of the
is
performance
more
stuff here.
subtle.
Yeah.
That's more the performance stuff. And people don't want subtle. They want giant logos all over
Yeah.
everything. So, um, oh, good. I see somebody saying she's got 3 girls and she knows what's going on in Christmas list. You got to order in the next few days to make sure you get it by Christmas. So just make sure you order it soon.
And one
But
thing I like about these too, like this competes, like if you're a young lady and you love like Fabletics and things like that, and all these other brands, instead of going over and I don't know what Kate Hudson stands for, right? Like she's like the Fabletics person, but
yeah,
I know what you stand for, and I know where this
yeah,
money is going towards, and I know what you're fighting for. So instead of going to like the Fabletics style, come over to XXXY and get the same style quality product that you're going to get there, maybe even better, and get
it's
it from
better than
here because
Fabulous. Yeah.
this is fantastic
Don't,
stuff.
yeah. I mean, I think what I always tell people is I think up until recently, you didn't really have a lot of choices. If you want to buy a brand that aligns with your values, you had to sacrifice quality, fit, style, and performance. And you don't have to do that here. you can find a brand that stands up for what you believe in, that stands up for your daughter, and we can talk about what that means for us to stand up. But is incredibly high quality and is also really ethically made. I mean, I learned from the best at Levi's. They have incredibly ethical manufacturing.
Yep.
And I would never make product that didn't meet the highest standards, not just in quality, but in terms of how it's made. We visit all our factories. We know the people that make our product. We see the working conditions.
There you
So
are.
I feel that's me. That's my daughter too.
Nice.
Yeah. That's another product people like. It's just sort of funny. It's woman TM because apparently we have to trademark what it is to be a woman now
Well, I mean,
because
we have a
people
Supreme Court justice has no idea what a
doesn't
woman
know
is,
what a woman
so
is,
we got
and
to do that.
everybody's kind of trying to horn in on our actions. So they want to be women. So which woman TM is like a little joke. It's supposed to be funny. But yeah, we have a ton of great gifts. There's a ton of great
Ooh,
deals
those
right
socks.
now.
I like those socks.
I know those are. I'm wearing those black ones right now. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I mean, we're barely 8 months old, so we're brand spanking new. And I think we've been punching a bit above our weight class in terms of the presence in the market and how many people know about us, and even the sales trajectory, which has been really strong and, you know, beating our expectations. So it couldn't be going better, despite the fact that we get banned and kicked off all sorts of social media platforms for saying very true things like no males and women's sports.
Logical things, right? Things that shouldn't be a question. So, number one, I do want to give a shine. Like you said, Nate G came in here. He said he has 3 girls, know what's going on the Christmas list. Nate is our resident follower. He is always here with us. He's
Nice.
awesome. Yeah, Nate, definitely go get some XXXY stuff because, you know, Jennifer's doing, the left always likes to talk about being brave. Right now, when you started this, like you said, 8 months ago, it was still in the height of DEI, in the height of all the craziness and stuff. It was pre-Trump. So it's like we didn't know if the world was going to go crazier because obviously a Harris presidency makes what you're doing more important, but also might make it a lot more difficult, right? Like, because then you
Right.
would definitely be a bigot. Then you definitely would be a terrible person, right? Just for
Yeah.
doing
I
this.
think I think we need to be. I mean, I think it's great that Trump has said he's going to ban males and women's sports. I think it's really important. I think he will do everything he can. I think it's really important to recognize that he can't end it all. The
No.
office of the president just doesn't have that reach. He can certainly rescind the rewrite of Title IX that happened back in April, and
Yep.
that impacts sports in the education system. Although the states that are already acting on
God,
the new
we're
rewrite are
screwed
that
in
we're
New
going to have to
York.
claw that back.
We got
Um,
Proposition 1 here in New York, and it's
yeah,
awful. It's quite literally, like I said, with a coach, if I'm a New York coach and I pull my team off, I can have legal action against me
right.
with Proposition 1 now because
Right.
they've officially made being a trans person a protected class.
Well, that's what Title IX does. It
Yeah.
replaced women's sex-based rights in the education system with gender identity, essentially. Gender identity. So if you say you're a woman, you are. You say you're a woman and you want to be on the girls' whatever team, you are allowed to be, or in the locker room, or in any of the women's spaces like sororities on college campuses.
It's
And if
so
anybody
crazy.
protests or resists, then they will be accused of sexual harassment, and they will not have any due process within the education system and very well could be banned from campus, kicked out of school. But what he can't really affect is the Olympic movement.
Nope.
The USOPC, the U.S. Olympic Committee, is funded almost entirely by private companies. It is beyond the reach of the office of the president. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, is international, so obviously beyond the reach, and is also
Yep.
almost exclusively funded by private companies. And we know the IOC doesn't care if males beat up women in the boxing ring because we
Nope.
saw it this summer.
Mhm.
And then most of the private club sports, those are the ones that feed the Olympic movement. I mean, I never competed as a gymnast in the education system in my entire life. I competed in a private club that was part of the Olympic movement. So he
Yep.
can't really touch that either. The way to change all of those things is to change the culture. And when
Yes.
it becomes very clear that 80-90% of Americans agree with this common sense position, it will change. And so that's what I'm trying to do, be part, not solely, I'm not doing it alone. There's a lot of amazing people. And there's certainly a lot of people in the activist and advocacy space, but there's not any people in the kind of culture brand space. And I think that's an important component. Think about the way Nike influences culture.
Yeah.
Think about the way, I mean, in some ways, very positive. Nike basically got people to exercise. but in some ways negative. Nike put Dylan Mulvaney, the trans superstar, in an ad for running bras. This is a male with no boobs. It's not an athlete marketing one of their, important products that allows women to play sports. So that
And you look at
influences the
Colin
culture.
Kaepernick, you look at them, when they pulled the Betsy Ross flag shoes, like they're definitely playing into the culture. And like you said, they, as a big brand, they're not speaking out against women in sports. They are
No,
just
they've
going with the flow
taken
because they don't want
they've
to
taken
hurt
the
their money
opposite.
flow. Yeah.
I would argue they've taken the opposite
Mhm.
position by featuring Dylan, Mulvaney. They've
100%.
in women's running clothes. That's taking the opposite position. So we just want to provide a counter to that. Obviously we're tiny because we're brand new and they're a $50 billion brand that's 50 years old. But we're going to poke the bear a little bit. And I think we
So
can make a difference.
I'm curious, have you been approached Caitlyn Jenner at all to come? Because, as much as, Caitlyn Jenner obviously is a trans, male to female, was Bruce Jenner, incredible, one of the best decathletes in the history of the sport,
Yeah.
but is a conservative, is a strong advocate for
Yeah.
keeping women out of male sports. And I feel like, even though it would seem kind of like an odd couple, I feel like, their contribution to being an ambassador could be impactful, considering that there's somebody within that movement that's like
Yeah.
outspoken saying, oh, hell no, I would never want
Yeah.
a male competing in females. Like, I know what it was like to be at that level.
Yeah. I've had some conversations with Caitlin's
Team.
people. I
Yeah.
think I'm happy that Caitlin is out there saying the things I'm going to say that he does.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I think for us, our primary ambassadors are women, and they
Yeah.
are female athletes who are fighting this fight. And I want those women to have the platform
Yeah.
first and foremost. I don't. Yeah, and we do work with people like Adam because he speaks the truth, and we want people who are willing to speak the truth. But the primary face of the brand are the women fighting this battle, and those are the people I want on platform.
We need to suit up. What is it? All the volleyball teams that have stood up against San Jose State, you should send them all free XXXY apparel
Oh,
just
we've
to
sent
rock
them
and
all a
wear.
lot. We have sent them quite a bit, and we're going to be
Yes.
working with some of them very soon. So
Fantastic. And
yeah,
that's the way it should be.
we're very proud of those women. I mean, the courage that those young women have. These are women that are like 19, 20, 21 years old. Someone like Brooks Slusser, who is on San Jose State volleyball team. I think she's a setter.
Her
She's
bravery.
competing
Yeah.
on the team with Blair Fleming, a male player, and suing the NCAA for allowing a male to
Yep.
compete on that team. Like, I don't know, the courage of these women. Sia Lee, whose name I can't say right, who's the captain from Nevada. Like they're so brave. And Sia didn't even have the support of the university. The university was telling her, "Don't do this. You'll never get a job. This is
It's
the
so
wrong thing."
crazy.
And
Yeah.
she did it anyway because she has strength of character. And this is what I would like. This is what sports is supposed to do. Give you character and resilience and perseverance. And
Yep.
these young women, I think, are examples of all the reasons we want our children to play sports. Like, do we really care that much at the end of the day if they can do a backflip on the beam? Like, what does that
No.
do? No, you want the character building aspect. And these young women on these volleyball teams, I think, exhibit such strength of character. I'm so proud of them.
I want San Jose State to get a national championship, but I want them to not play a single game to get there. I want every single team that plays against them to just forfeit. And I want it to be the biggest joke of a volleyball national championship ever. Because I think the best way to get this type of stuff out of sports is advocacy like yours, but
Yeah.
also putting it on for the sideshow it is,
Right.
right? Like, for every time, I've said flat out, every time a male steps onto the track, all the ladies competing against them
Need to
should
walk
get
away.
ready, should, on your mark, and the moment the gun goes off, stand up and in unison walk off the track and let that individual compete on their own, because then it
Right.
becomes the sideshow that it is. And
Yeah.
that's the best way, is to, if they want to live in clown world, let them be in clown world. Let them look at it, and then, as they're calling everybody else bigots and this small pocket screaming to the moon, it's going to eventually turn out, and everyone's going to
I mean,
look
they
around and
can't
go, they're the crazy ones, not
they
us.
can't cause. I mean, what 80% of us are bigots, and I mean, I guess there's people on the far left that would say yes, but it's fact. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's not
Mhm.
true. It's not fair. Women's sports are for women only. So
Yes.
are women's spaces. Locker rooms, battered women's shelters, prisons. there are reasons why the sexes in some instances are segregated, and women
Yeah.
deserve safety, privacy, and fairness, and men cannot be women. It's that simple.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. Men are just better at being women than women.
That's
I,
that.
I,
That's the message.
that's the
Well, and
message. Men are better at being women than women. That's it. They win beauty pageants.
yeah,
They beat you. You know, they win in sporting events. So it's just, I'm sorry, women just go away. I guess. I don't know.
basically, women, go away. The men are. And that's the thing. This whole thing is so misogynistic. It's so because the message sent to women who dare stand up for themselves, to me, to Riley, to these young volleyball players, is shut up, be quiet, sit down.
Yep.
Let this guy have what he wants. Let him have what he wants. Why? How is that any different than like total retrograde misogyny from the
100%.
50s? It's exactly the same. It's just wearing a dress.
It's everything the leftists always do, though, because they were cheering for black people to segregate themselves in college again, have their own, graduation ceremonies, and it's like the isms that they scream at, the isms they scream at everyone else they're the ones always doing it, and that's just kind of how their ideology always works. They play the victim card, and it's always, it's always a projection here. So I want to get quickly, Nate G jumping in saying Nike is the worst on every front. Always root against Oregon just for that. I mean, Oregon has some pretty dope uniforms, so I can't get mad. Some of the uniforms on football are really cool. And then Nate come back in. I sort of agree, Alex, but I always want Nebraska to win the volleyball natty. Nate, you got to sacrifice, man.
San Jose did not make it to the NCAAs. They lost in the Mountain West Conference. So even with a male on the team. But see, this is the thing. People use that on the left to say, well, they didn't even win. That's not actually the point.
No.
Blair Fleming, the male player on the team, displaced a female on the team. He took her spot on the team. He took her scholarship. He made that team. He was, well, I don't know when. He doesn't talk. He doesn't say anything. We don't know. But my understanding is that he transitioned at a very young age. He's a way better female player than he would be a male player. He's a way better player.
Is what you're saying? He was abused as a child.
Well, he would be a shitty male player. That's the thing. It's like, and he's a pretty good player in the women's division. I shouldn't say he's a good female player because he's not a female. He's a man in the women's division. Here, the best example of this is Will Thomas, also known as Leah Thomas, who Riley swam against at the NCAA finals back in 2022. Will Thomas had been a male swimmer of literally no repute for 3 years at the University of Pennsylvania. He was ranked between 400 and 500 in every event he swam in. In 1 year, no change in training, same coach, same everything. He goes to being top 6 across a whole variety of events.
Yeah, but then they say, but he didn't win. So what are you talking about? Yeah, but he took a place. And what people need to understand, especially in a sport like swimming, your ranking in the NCAA matters massively for what you want to do potentially at a national level, because there is no pro league. And if there is, it's a small one, right? It's the elite elites
like
get to compete, like gymnastics, like track's getting better right now. But it's, these Olympic sports, the NCAAs is your gateway to your invitation to the USA competition. So to have something knocked off, and I was happy with USA Swimming handling some of the pressure and saying, hey, we have enough women to fill our national team. We don't need males. So that was a really good stance that they had. I mean, when you have Katie Ledecky, you could make that stance. I don't know if Katie Ledecky and some of those people didn't exist. They might have been like, hey, Leah, come on, we need international prowess. But but they did make the right. I will congratulate them on that. Their message was very clear. Leah Thomas not welcome. Only women compete. So kudos to them because it was a statement too, and kind of the height of it where they could have folded very easily. So I give them kudos.
Swimming did the right thing. U.S. Track and Field, I don't know what the governing body is called, but they also did. And then the international governing bodies for swimming and track have also made the right decision. It's all very fractured and complicated because each of the governing bodies gets to decide for themselves, and each of them has a different rule. There's no sort of blanket rule from the IOC or from the USOPC. They're all sort of dodging it because no one wants to be called a bigot. And so they're willing to sacrifice girls and women and how hard they work in that process. Anyone who's competed at a very high level knows that you lose more than you win. I mean, unless you're 100%. Simone Biles, unless you're Simone Biles or, Michael.
Cindy McLaughlin and things like that. The elite elites, the generationals.
most people lose more than they win. And that's part of it. You learn that you can get through losing and you pick yourself up and you keep going. And we can handle losing. We can't handle losing when it's not a fair fight.
Mhm.
And the argument that they don't win is bullshit because, everyone who takes steroids didn't win either, but they
Nope.
dramatically improved their performance. That's what makes it an unfair advantage.
And
And we
they've
don't
their
allow
whole
steroids.
No. And their whole conversation has been derailed too when the UN of all places, the UN, who is not conservative, not very
Right.
like big on these type of topics on our side, I guess, quote unquote,
Yeah,
but they came out with the report and I
that's
believe
right.
it said over 900
Yep.
medals and places were taken internationally
Yep.
by males over females
Yep.
in sports. And I believe it was collegiate and down, right?
That's correct.
So that is a massive number. And the leftists come and say it's only 900. Screw you. That is someone's daughter. That's
Well,
someone's wife. That's someone's, that maybe has had an opportunity taken away from them. And one of the sports that's massive with this, skateboarding has been awful.
yeah,
Skateboarding has been really bad on this front.
yeah,
Because they're allowing so many, male to females to jump into their sport. And it's again, this is another thing where now it's an Olympic sport and you're now getting spots taken away from
yeah.
females that should be competing there.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, in contact sports or combat sports, it's dangerous,
Oh my
and
God.
there have been injuries already. But the 900 spots, that's just in the last few years,
Yep.
but that affects tens of thousands of women. So you can say it's 900, but it's not just the person that they kicked off the medal stand. It's every single woman that competed in that event.
Yep.
It's every single woman that vied to get to compete in that event. It's every single woman that had to change in the locker room with a male, like Paula Scanlon at the University of Pennsylvania with Will Thomas. So
Mhm.
it impacts thousands. And what does that mean? It's only 900. Okay, it's only 500 victims of Larry Nassar. Why is this a big deal? 500 victims. Like, it should never happen. There's been injuries, there have been concussions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peyton McNabb is a volleyball player, high school volley. Now she's in college, but she was
Mhm.
in high school and she was injured by a male player. She suffered a traumatic brain injury that she still suffers partial paralysis on one side from. Like, why is one injury okay? It's not. I think that, like I said, I think we're going to make progress. I think Trump
Yes.
will correct Title IX, but I still think we
Hopefully.
have quite a long way to go. And I think we just need to
Yes.
be vigilant. And until every single person that agrees with us is willing to stand up and say it, then without fear of backlash, then we're not done.
We can't get along just to get along. So, one of the topics I want to talk to you, you talked about the corporate side of it. And we've been seeing a lot of corporations kind of reversing their DEI stances and coming out and saying, hey, they're saying Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays. They're not going to, they're going to maybe push the trans stuff into the back corner at Target, not in the front. Like, so do you feel like the wokeism's going away? Or are they just kind of dormant till they could do it again? Are they masking it? Because I know I like video games. And one of the things they're doing in the gaming space is they're getting rid of DEI, but they're moving to something else called Bridge, which is much more nefarious, right? They're just
Mm,
changing the names. And one of the things about the leftist movement, if you study it, is they're very postmodern. They like to mess with words. So
yeah.
while they're getting rid of DEI, is there a sleight of hand going on here that you see, or do you really think it's going away?
I think it's really complicated. I think that for a lot of people at the senior levels in the companies, they never really meant it. It was full on hypocrisy, this sort of
Mhm.
woke capitalism. Um, but they saw it as a way to make money.
Mhm.
It wasn't talked about that way. It's not talked about that way internally necessarily, but it was viewed as a viable marketing strategy. This is going to make people like us. Um, so I think that's part of it. But I do, and it makes people like them in an age when privilege is no longer praised, right? Like, these
Yeah.
are some of the richest people in the world, these CEOs, and their kids go to these woke private schools. They want their kids to like them. They want their friends in their community to like them. So they pretend to be these social justice warriors by taking these woke stances. But at the end of the day, they're greedy corporate capitalists, and that's all they are. But they're trying to kind of conceal that. I think on the other hand, it's a lot of waste of time. It's really bad for business, right?
Mhm.
HR is policing your language. It's terrible for collaboration and innovation and creativity. Everybody's afraid to talk.
Yep.
So I do think in some sense, some CEOs are relieved. They would never say it because that would show that they never meant it in the first place. That would show the hypocrisy. But I think some of them are relieved to quietly back away from it. Like their employees has been in DEI trainings for hours and hours every day. They're all terrified to speak. Um, let's face it, most of these CEOs are in their 50s or 60s or even 70s. Like they believe in merit. They're not, they're old school in that sense. So, a lot of it I think they think was dumb, but they had to do it and they allowed themselves to be bullied by their HR person, by their legal person, by their corporate person. But now there's pressure from the other direction. We let the left put all the pressure on in the past, make them do this. Organizations like Human Rights Campaign. Now the right is putting pressure on people like Robbie Starbuck, and you have me. I
Thank
mean,
God. Robbie's
Walmart.
awesome.
Walmart is the biggest corporation in the biggest employer, corporate employer in the country, and they just disavowed and walked away from DEI. So, I think I think it's going to unravel. And I think partly because the CEOs are going to be relieved to let it go. And then you have these catastrophes like Bud Light and Target with their, Bud Light, I don't need to go through what happened there. Everybody knows their Dylan Mulvaney promo, and Target with their trans bathing suits for 6-year-olds. And, they were boycotted for a while. And so everybody's just is like, can we just get back to marketing product and, unify? And I think you see this Christmas some really clear examples of this, like the latest Apple ad. Have you seen this one? Have you seen the app?
I didn't see the ad, but I heard about it. I heard it was
Yeah.
very like family oriented and
Yeah. I
Merry
mean,
Christmas and more
well,
old school, like 90s type of commercial.
it totally was. It's for these earbuds, but they're also hearing aids. And this
That's
dad
cool.
who's hard of hearing puts them in so he can hear his daughter play the guitar that he bought her for Christmas. It's like totally
It's pretty
heartwarming.
wholesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very wholesome. It's really beautifully executed. So I think yeah, I mean, I think they are desperate to get back to kind of more who wants to sort of cut off half of their consumer base, and they just had convinced themselves they weren't doing that. You have to realize these people live in a bubble. They
They do.
live in New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles, and they think everybody has these views. And I think this election was a wake up call to say,
Hopefully.
not everybody agrees with you.
My biggest concern is that you have these corporations like your BlackRock and your Vanguard who buy up massive amounts of shares of these companies. And they're the ones that are buying into the UN jargon, with the 27 sustainability goals and the World Economic Forum stuff
Yes.
and all this. And that, while we're seeing it kind of come a little
Yeah.
back to the right, they're just going to rename something and they're going to try again. Right. Cause I've come under the
Maybe.
new, I've come under the new theory that, everyone says like history repeats itself or it rhymes. My new theory for modern history is just leftists try again. Like that is kind of like the
Yeah.
collectivists try one more time. And like
But
you
here's
kind of
the
get that
thing.
same thing.
That's what a lot of people say about the BlackRocks of the world. And the banks.
Mhm.
I think for the banks and the end of the day, those people are rabid capitalists and they want to make money.
Mhm.
The greed will save us in the end because if this
Hopefully.
strategy stops working and stops making money for these companies, then they aren't going to do it anymore. They don't actually care about all this stuff. I really don't think they do. They don't care about it. They care about it in the sense that it made them admirable and it made them liked. So they could be these greedy corporate raiders and capitalists and still present themselves as social justice warriors and have people think they were honorable. Well, when it stops making money for them, they're going to prioritize, I believe, the money over the being liked. That's
I
my
like your
theory.
I like your optimism there. Nate T coming in saying Coors Light should bring back the and Twins commercial would be the final death blow to Bud Light. That's a classic. And oh fucks, great name. History renames itself. So yeah, there is a lot of that going on, but I do like your optimism. And I'm hoping that you're correct that we're gonna get a lot of the wokeism out of corporate America.
I
So,
think we're going to go back to normie capitalism. That's what I call it.
normie
Normie
capital.
capitalism.
That would be good. Just like, people just making money off of things that everyone likes. And here's the thing too. It's like the leftists have always had their say, right? Like in arts and things like that. Like the one thing I always said is all my favorite stuff, a lot of the times they were made by people that are far left, maybe even communists, and they would subtly throw in a jab here and there about things. I've been a conservative my whole life, proudly been on the right since I was young, not going to apologize ever. Right. But I can watch something and I could see something that is a absolute jab at the right, but it's not the whole story. It's
Yeah.
not the whole episode. And
Right.
if that was a thing, it was a movie and you knew it. I didn't watch it. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But that was always a thing. And I just want to see it go back to that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need
Just
to have these whole entire like Christian conservative everything. It's like, no, because
no.
I'm like, I don't want to watch that either half the time.
Yeah.
I
No.
like the artsy fartsy leftists. They're really good at
Yeah.
what they do.
Well,
So
that's so interesting you say that because I have this conversation all the time with somebody who works with us at the brand who is a lifelong conservative. He's a Christian. I am not a Christian, nor am I a conservative, but
yeah,
we see eye to eye on a ton of things. And he's like, I always, the left does it better. Like the food is better, the movies are better, the art is better, the brands are better. And so we need to provide an alternative to that. And it's very interesting. I've asked myself this question, like, why are the movies bad that they make? And there is a piece of it that is the training and the schools aren't even open to people that have a more conservative. Can you
sure.
imagine applying to UCLA Film School and saying you wanted to make conservative Christian movies? Like, I'm sorry, you wouldn't even get, you would never get in. So
I think
you
a part of
wouldn't,
the big issue though is the right hasn't taken culture seriously for 45,
they
50 years.
they don't.
And that's the big issue too, because
That's a
we have
problem.
incredibly talented people on the right. One of the people we've had on the show, George Alexopoulos, G Prime 85, one of the best cartoonists I've ever seen. Political
Yeah.
cartoonist. He's amazing. He's famous for his little 4 panels. They're incredible. And sitting on my back, I don't know where it is. I think it might be Gooseberry Pie is a children's book that he did. He's going to make a sequel. It's an adorable little comic that he did. And, I like to support the people on the right that do good artwork, that do good stuff like
Yeah.
that, because there isn't. And I just think we need to embrace it more because
I
obviously
think you're right.
we're better in the podcasting space than the leftists have ever been. And this is a form of media. This is a form of art.
It
And it's,
is.
conservative radio, conservative podcasting is the way to go. Like there's Pod Save America. They suck. They're just famous for, not being like on the right. That's basically it.
They're
So
famous for working with Obama. That was why
yeah,
they
they're
got famous.
terrible. And they're
No,
not
I
great at
think
what
you're
they do.
right. I think it seems to me, as someone who's sort of been welcomed on the right, but did not grow up that way and did
Yeah, no.
not sort of grow up in that space, that there is an attitude that if we present enough facts, we can overwhelm people and convince them. I mean, Ben Shapiro, facts don't care about your feelings, but
The
they
feelings
do.
don't care about your facts. So it's like,
That's right. And so we have to acknowledge that to influence the culture, politics is downstream from culture, policy is downstream from culture. If it's
Mhm,
gotten to the point where the policy is being passed, we have lost the battle.
mhm.
And now we have to claw it back because the policy, as far as a revised Title IX, which prioritizes gender identity over
Yep,
sex-based rights for women, that was executive ordered into the ether and people welcomed it and accepted it because
yep.
the culture was already like open to it. And so we have a lot of work to do to claw back normalcy, I think.
It's always, and the conservatives have been, and you've definitely seen this. There's always been the whole entire, oh, it's a conservatives talking about that slippery slope again. And it's like they just suck at describing it. They've always been real bad about why we should pay attention to this stuff. And it's been true, right? Like we've seen like they pushed back against like homosexuality becoming popular, but they did it in a terrible way. It's like because of Christianity. It's like, no, shut up, you idiots. Like that's not why. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with homosexuality. I grew up with my mother was a hairdresser. I was around more gay men
Right.
and women than straight men than women, right? That was kind of what I grew up in. But it's like there's a reason why they were saying culturally, right? Making this a norm. And now we're seeing it because it's definitely slipped where being gay is as good as being straight now. They're useless. Now it's on to trans people, and then it's on to being queer as a political ideology. And it's like there's a reason why there is a conservative pushback against things. It's just they've always been so bad at culturally talking about it that you don't actually get their point as to, yes, conservatives never gave a shit about adults liking males, females liking females. But it was more of what the impact of making
The
this ubiquitous
family.
everywhere. And it's like, it's not a bad thing to show it on TV every once in a while. But if every single
Well,
TV show, every single where
there's
has
only,
that
yeah.
gay couple and this and that, and it's like, it comes to a point now where it's more of an influence. And I think that's something we need to be better about. And I love your brand because your brand's all about messaging. And I think
Well,
your messaging is good and it makes the point so much better than so many people on the right have ever done.
well, I think what I'm trying to do, look, there are a lot of people that work in, not a lot because we're tiny, but there are people that work in the company that are Christians and their
Yeah.
view of this issue comes from a very Christian perspective.
Mhm.
My view as an atheist is this is just about basic truth. And they agree with that too. I mean, the
Yeah.
basic truth is there are two sexes. Sex is binary. There's XX and there's XY, and
Yep.
women are not as strong or as fast, and that's why we have women's sports. I mean, it's
Mhm.
kind of that simple, and that is also why women need their own private spaces. We
Yeah.
aren't safe all the time in spaces that are mixed sex. If you are in a battered women's shelter, you deserve to have a space that is female only.
Yep.
And so I just come at this from a place of truth, and I think that can appeal really broadly because
Yeah.
that can appeal to the Christians who have been on the right side of this issue, but it can also appeal to anyone who has common sense. You know, that's it's like the end of the day. It's so stupid. We even need to have this conversation. Like, you cannot change your sex. That is just so obvious. The human body is more than just like a Mr. Potato Head parts that you can cut off and move around. The body has function. It's so dumb. Everybody knew 10 years ago that men could not become women. There were what they called transsexuals. There were a very
And they had
small number
gender
of them.
dysphoria. And we
That's
knew that they had gender dysphoria and that kids that suffered it typically grew out of it and were most likely either homosexual or were just going through a phase because they're in puberty. And that's the thing that fucking boggles my mind more than anything. We want to allow children who, if they wake up with a pimple that morning, they are crying hysterically and their day is ruined, but then they can make a decision about who they want to have sex with or what they are. It's like, it is the dumbest thing of all time. These individuals would still eat candy every single day for every single meal.
I have my daughter just turned 8. I mean, they're crazy. Like, I mean, I love them dearly, but they're nuts when they're 7, 6, 8. They have
They're
no
so
idea
smart,
about
but they're so dumb
anything.
at the same time. Like,
Like
they
the
are both.
worst.
They're incredibly intelligent. My 6-year-old is a whiz, but I would not trust her to do everything on her own. I
Well,
wouldn't let her go and choose all of her meals. Like,
and this idea
you need
that
to guide them,
kids know themselves. No, they do not. Most adults don't know themselves, let's be honest. You know,
no,
most people lack any ability to be
especially going
introspective
through
at all.
puberty. You know,
I mean,
you're
you are
going through.
insane.
Oh
You're
my God,
crazy.
your chemical imbalance is permanent through puberty, like because you're developing so many different things. And I mean, and the thing is, what I've talked to leftists and stuff, and with the way they view this, Jennifer, it's crazy. They don't see kids as kids; they see kids as tiny adults.
That is
And
true.
this is also with the movement of the MAPS, minorly attracted people. We
Ugh.
call them pedophiles in the real world, and there's a state I forget. I think it might be like New Hampshire or Vermont. Legally, pedophiles are called MAPS, and it's a normalizing because then when you are talking
Yeah.
about, oh, they're not kids, they're just tiny adults. Now it's okay for adults to have
Right.
consensual sex with these
Right.
tiny adults who can make adult decisions about their bodies and things like that. And it's when you get into the weeds of this, it's so much deeper than just can a kid be trans or not.
No,
And
of course. I mean,
it's the whole ideology.
there's a fundamental ideology, which
Mhm.
is a
Which we
lie
can go on for
at
another
the
like
heart of this,
9
and
hours
it's
about.
completely dehumanizing, and it views the body as material, and it's detrimental to. I mean, if think about this is how I think about it. If the powers that be, the ideologues around this issue and many others can get us to say things like trans women are women, men can become women. If you say you're a woman, you are, like, the most fundamental truth in the history of the world, that there are men and that there are women. If we can upend that and spew garbage, then we can be convinced of anything. It's the most destabilizing thing, and that's why I care about it so much. I mean, I care about women's sports, I care about all that stuff, but I care about the truth. And this is such a fundamental lie. And I really honestly believe that if we can adopt this lie as normal, we can be convinced of anything. And it is really not just detrimental, but it's our demise essentially. And for me, COVID was very much the same thing. We
Yeah.
were convinced that this was this incredibly deadly virus, that everybody was at equal risk, that we had to trade our freedom for safety. We had to not leave our homes. We had to not visit loved ones in the hospital. We had to deny our children an
It's so
education.
crazy.
I mean, it's and speech needed to be censored for our own good and for our own safety.
And
We
if you
were
were a
convinced of
doctor
that,
not on the right side of it, you were automatically censored. Like, if you were
or
calling
not,
for the
or
wrong
you
thing,
lost
you
your
weren't the
license.
science.
Yeah.
We had
So,
on Peter McCullough months
oh,
ago, and he warned about that they already have a vaccination getting ready for bird flu. And what have we been hearing about a lot?
yeah,
That the bird flu is on the West Coast now, and it's starting to get into everything. And watch out for the, that bird flu. And he was saying months ago, hey, they have a vaccine ready to go. They're already
yeah,
talking, they're already doing it. And he's someone that has suffered a ton in his career because of it.
yeah. That is true.
But
That is true.
yeah. So overall, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love what you stand for. I love what XXXY is, and I love that you're staying who you are. That you are not, just because you've been kind of embraced by the right. You're not a grifter. You're not sitting here going, "I'm a conservative now." Yes, like, you're still who you are. You're just like, no, these people aren't insane. We agree on some basic principles. Let's get to work. Let's protect our women and things like that. And I really, really, really think that your brand is going to explode,
Well,
and we're
thanks.
going to be seeing it everywhere. And we want to do our part here,
Thank you.
and in terms of promoting it. So anytime you have any specials or
Awesome.
anything, please let us know.
Thanks.
We want to let
Absolutely.
our people, any like codes or anything like that. We want to let them know, because me and my brother here, who's typically with me, we are 100% in agreement with you. Men are men, women are women. Women should not have to compete against men, unless they choose to, right? If you want to go and try and
That's
compete
fine.
against a man in the men's league, go for
That's
it. We've
fine.
seen,
Agreed.
Annika Sorenston do it in golf and other people. Cool.
Totally agree.
Go for it.
Yeah,
That's your choice.
my son is 10 and
Mhm.
he plays soccer pretty seriously. He's in like the elite
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
here. And there's girls on the team, but they choose to be on the team. They
Yeah.
also play on the girls' team. But in some instances, they do play on the boys. But they're 10, and I would argue that in 3 to 4 years they won't do that anymore because they won't be able to. They'll
I
be
still don't
10 to
like it.
50%.
I
I
still
mean,
want them separated at that point. I think, the difference between like the size and the athleticism of the girls and boys start to show at a pretty young
well,
age.
you don't see it at the 13, 14. I mean, I know the levels and the teams here,
Yeah.
and you just don't see it at that age. But in most sports, the men's category is actually open. We don't know that, but
Yeah.
it
100%
usually
it
is.
is.
And the NAIA, which is a governing body for
Yep.
college athletics, club athletics, that kind of thing, some Division 3 schools, they did make the right decision earlier this year, and they said the women's category is for XX only, the men's category is open, anyone can compete. That's the perfect solution. I actually prefer that solution to a
Yeah.
third category, because if you create a third category for these trans identified male athletes, then you basically, in professional arenas, you have men winning two categories and women winning one. So the prize money then goes 2/3 to men. And so
Yeah.
but that's, I won't go down that road right now. So the NAIA has done the right thing. There are signs of hope, but I think we have to keep pushing and we can't be complacent.
Absolutely. Before we jump out of here, I want to read Ofuk's comment over here. That's another postmodern tactic by manipulating language and people's understanding of it. They don't need to pass new laws that they could shift society to read the current laws in their favor. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
agree with
that's
that.
exactly what we're seeing. They're just using words and making society, and they keep on repeating it, jamming it down our throats. And it's something that we all need to fight against. It's something on this show we'll continue to fight against. And I know you will also continue to fight against it, Jennifer. And you have an ally here on this show.
Thanks.
You have someone who believes in what you're doing, and really pumped that you decided to come on. Thank you so much for giving us, some of your time here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I hope folks will check out product. If you want to buy it before Christmas, you gotta go now. So
Yes, www.xx-xyathletics.com. We had it up there, and go over there. They have some really cool stuff. If you want the design, get it. If you don't, they have their performance stuff without the design on it. Just really good stuff. Go work out in it. It's fantastic. But yeah, so we 100% believe here what you're doing. And she is Jennifer Sey. She is the founder, CEO of XXXY Athletics. If you want to go find her, you can go at Jennifer Sey. Sey is spelled S-E-Y, not S-A-Y. But Jennifer Sey on X, on Instagram, Jen Sey SF. And then go
cool.
follow all of XXXY Athletics on X and Instagram at XX_XY Athletics. So we
Thanks.
We appreciate everybody that watched here, whether you were on X, not Instagram, X, Kick, Facebook, YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast space, thank you. Please go spread this word of mouth. Go do the follow, like, all that good stuff. And we'll be back next week. I'm feeling much better. So I'll probably be back tomorrow doing our daily show. But feeling significantly better and happy to be back. Happy that Jennifer was my first guest back, because this was a show I've been pumped about doing for a while. So once again, we appreciate everyone for watching and listening. We'll be back. So long, y'all.